This is the flag of Russia, known as the Flag Росси in Russian, and it's one of many beautiful European simplistic tricolours found throughout the continent today. Although in the past there was another flag that was used in Russia and that is quite famous in historical circles, and that's this one on the right with a double-headed eagle. So today I want to look at where the current Russian flag, the tricolour, came from, but also this other flag, the eagle flag. What's the history behind them both? One of the earliest mentions of flags in Russia is in 1552, when the Tsar Ivan the Terrible succeeded in capturing the city of Kazan, and in one of the descriptions of the capture of Kazan it mentions that his regiments were victorious under a flag showing the most gracious saviour, and this is actually a very old example that has survived to us today, and it seems that for a large part of the 16th century and into the 17th century this was the standard used by the Tsars, and this was certainly the case during the reign of Peter the Great as well, although during his reign we also get some different things showing up which are very interesting. One of these examples is in 1669 when we hear that inside his flag, a source from his court when two Polish painters came to paint basically scenes around the world, and when it came to Russia the description of the flag they had is that in the circle there is a two-headed eagle wearing two crowns, and in his chest the king on horseback pricks a serpent with his spear. So the latter mentioned there is of St. George, who I talked about in my video on the Old English flag, because, well, the English flag is the cross of St. George and the serpent he's slaying is the dragon. But what interests me here is the start of this with the two-headed eagle, and this is a banner from the reign of Peter the Great where we can see this two-headed eagle being displayed. So that's easy. For Peter the Great's reign, he's using the symbol, the banner of the two-headed eagle with the crowns. However, later on in his reign in 1696, when he captures the Ottoman port of Azov, if you look closely at the flags on display there, another flag is mentioned as having been hoisted on the map. But this flag looks very different. It's red, white and blue and a tricolour. So who on earth could have inspired this? That's right, of course, it was the Dutch. Now, Peter the Great, who was the Tsar at the time, wanted to move Russia from being a rather backwards, very orthodox nation to being one of the more modern European ones. And at the time, the Dutch in the 17th century were the foremost nation on earth. And so he decided to go to the Netherlands and to learn the art of shipbuilding, which the Dutch were very good at the time. So he actually went and lived in Amsterdam to learn how to build ships, and then to take that knowledge back to Russia so that they could fight the Swedes on the sea. And actually what you can see in this picture, it may look like a battle, but actually it's just a practice battle. They put on a battle for him so that he could observe the Dutch maritime tactics, and if you look closely in the bottom left of the image you'll actually see one of the earliest Russian flags with this ensign, and again with the symbol of the double-headed eagle in there. But this was the ship, it was a yacht style ship that Peter the Great was on during this practice battle so that he could observe what was there. And after his time in the Netherlands, the Dutch Republic at the time, he went back to Russia and taught the people there how to use it, or so the story goes. And that pretty much is where this design of the red, white and blue, of course the Dutch flag, then gets transported to Russia and turned into the white, blue and red that you later see in Russia at the time. Now, in 1700, this had become the official flag of Russia at the time. It was used on merchant vessels before that, but in 1700 it became the national colour, although sometimes you also saw variations with the coat of arms, so with this double-headed eagle also on top, but normally on the sea it was just used as the plain colours, and in 1705 it became the official flag for Russian merchants. Now, while it was a copy of the Dutch flag in many ways, it also did take on a new significance for the Russians, as each colour had its meaning. So the white was for God, the blue was for the king, and the red was for the people or for the nation. Now, interestingly enough, in 1858 they actually decided to change the flag into this one, the black, the gold and the white. And the reason for this is because these colours were found, that is until 1883 when it was changed again, and the reason for this is that these colours are found on the coat of arms. And this is when I want to dive in and look at the coat of arms with the eagle. Where does this design come from? So as I pointed out, the eagle is a very important symbol for Russia and was representative of their monarchy, of the Tsars, for a long time, and made it onto several of their flags, like the one on the left, an imperial standard, as well as another which I showed with just the normal, the white, red and blue on there, but then with an eagle over the top. And you also had one where they put that in the corner that was used during the Second World War as a kind of canton. But this actually goes back to the Byzantine Empire. And now the Byzantines, you know, were the Eastern Roman Empire, and the Romans were famous for their love of eagles, or the aquila that they used, that the legions would carry into battle. And then this was also transported into the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine empires. This is a later image, obviously, but you can see on the dress of the empress there that there are lots of double-headed golden eagles. And for the Byzantines, the double-headed eagle became the sign of their authority and their power, and it also became intrinsically linked to the Orthodox Church. And it's through this link that we get the first link to Russia. Now, actually, Russia, as many of you will know, the name is given to it by Vikings who went east. So many of these were Swedes, and they went down the great rivers to try and connect up to the city of Byzantium. It was incredibly wealthy. You had Byzantium. You also had the Arabs that were coming up at the time, the Abbasid Caliphate and the Umayyad Caliphate that replaced it. These were incredible centers of wealth and silver, so they would go down the rivers to get after this source of silver, essentially is why they went east, and eventually they founded their own principalities there. They were known as the Rus. This could come from the word red, or it could come from a Finnic word meaning rower, but essentially Rus gave us Russia in the end. It's the land of the Rus, even though they were probably a small part of the making of Russia in terms of ethnicity and culture. Later on it becomes very Slavicized. But to cut a long story short, one of these princes, Vladimir the Great, around the year 1000 decided to convert, and there's a whole story about him not being able to decide whether he wants to convert to Catholic Christianity, Islam or Judaism, but that in the end he decides to convert to Orthodox Christianity due to the fact that Basil, the Emperor Basil, was also an Orthodox Christian of the Byzantine Empire, and that's why Russia today is largely Orthodox. Now in 1472 there is a really clear link between Russia and the Byzantines, and this is because the last Byzantine emperor's niece actually married Ivan the Great, and this really makes Ivan the Great one of the potential heirs to the Roman Empire, and that meant that they could officially use the double-headed eagle. This was a great claim, of course, from a political point of view. You were the heirs of the Romans, but also from a religious point of view. They were Orthodox Christians, and the seat of Orthodox Christianity had been right there in Byzantium. Obviously no longer, because the Ottomans had taken it over. But that is why essentially you have these two flags in Russia. The one on the left that originates in the later 17th century based on a Dutch design but then changed around to become more Russian, and the one on the right, although in many variations it's largely just the double-headed eagle that's posted on many different flags because of this connection to the Byzantines, to Orthodox Christianity that goes way back to the Romans. So that is the case until 1917, of course, when the communists take over, which always leads to a lot of red flags. Anyway, so then you obviously get lots of different red variations. This is the one they seem to decide on. They change things around a little bit in the USSR with that. But of course, during the Russian Civil War, which went on until 1923, many of them were still the White Russians, so against the Bolsheviks were still using the red, blue and white flag, as well as the Imperial Eagle. Now it was revived for a short period of time in the 1940s during the German invasion of the Soviet Union by these Russian collaborationist forces, who would then go back to using the white, blue and red, as you can see here on this badge from one of those forces. But after their defeat, it disappeared completely from more official usage and was used by pro-democracy demonstrators against the communist regime until 1991, of course, when the Soviet Union collapsed, and then they went back to a variation of this ensign color of the white, blue and red, although as you can see the blue color is of a different shade than it was in the past. But they decided in 1993 to go back to the right shade, the one that it had been during Peter's reign and afterwards, and that is the flag of the Russian Federation today. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. This has been my video on the Russian flag as well as the two-headed eagle, the coat of arms or the imperial standard, and the history and the meaning behind the two. Now I hope you've really enjoyed this one. It's a really interesting one to look into, especially all these eagle designs that pop up throughout Europe, often going back to the Romans and then the Byzantines and the double-headed eagle, because of course if you're a fan of history then you'll know that the double-headed eagle was also used in Friesland first of all, but more importantly perhaps by the Holy Roman Empire as well, and I'm sure I'll cover that in a video in the future. So thank you very much for watching. This has been Hilbert, and this has been, I can't even get the outro wrong, that was embarrassing. We'll try that one again. I'm Hilbert, and this has been The History. So I will say Zdravstvuyte, and I will see you next time.